They're black.
Okay, you didn't say that. Because you're right. But my point is, it still don't make no sense.
Right.
You didn't put black in the Constitution.
Right.
You made up black after the Constitution.
Ooh.
When we fought, it wasn't black and white. It was us against them. And when we decided to write the Constitution, it was us. All the people who fought and got cleared. Right. This is all of us. So the moment, the very first time that somebody black couldn't do anything on here, the moment they said that, the reason was what? The only differential between them was their color.
Right.
So America made color be a racist thing.
D.
Because from then on, every single law, there was a distinction between who could do something and what. And it wasn't because whether you were a citizen or not.
Right.
It was what color you were.
Right.
So that's where racism started. But that's the start of America. And everything built after that was built on that racism, that the labor that had to be done was done by black people.
Right.
That's racist.
Right.
But before that started, because you know who else couldn't do?
Yeah.
Couldn't assemble, couldn't own land, couldn't do something? Women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was a white supremacist government built. You had to be white and a man. A white patriarchal system.
Yep.
Patriarchal system that was built. Now my point is, when they built that, I'm not saying that they built it because they wanted to stop black people.
Mm-hmm.
They just built it without us.
Right.
They didn't even consider us them.
Right.
Unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the point that somebody wanted something, they knew right away to say you can't.
Right.
It wasn't written down.
Right.
It was just assumed you're a different color. You're not a male.
Right.
That's something that's natural. So that's why racism is so natural, because you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll hear people talk about when they come over here from Italy or Poland and talk about how rough a time they had.
Yeah.
And the only reason they had that was because either their speech or because they claimed to be that.
Right.
Because what you find out in history, you'll hear people tell you, a lot of Italians changed their name.
Right.
So then they wasn't discriminated against.
Mm.
A lot of Poland maybe changed their name.
So
you got everything you got because you were assumed a citizen because of your color.
Always comes back to that.
Always.
Right.
In America, I mean.
So what would you say to a lot of rebuttals to, well, it ain't just blacks didn't have it hard. My parents came over and we're Greek and we're Italians and we had it hard too. Do you think there's a differentiation, or do you think they're...
Well, I think there's differentiation depending on what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. If they say they had a hard time, I'd say, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Then you had a hard time. I don't just say you didn't.
Right.
But you kind of discount what happened. You're trying to compare what happened to you to me.
That's what I believe happens.
Well, then let's talk about what happened to me and mine.
Right.
What happened to mine we were sold away from family members. We were whipped and hung on a tree and whipped if we didn't do something. So what you were told, you can't have it because you were Italian and they just didn't let you have it.
Right.
But if you went home and learned English and came back the next day and you didn't say your name was Latigliota,
right,
and you said your name was Johnson,
right,
you got the job.
Right.
There's nothing I can do to come back there after I got whooped or told I couldn't do this and say, I want this.
Right.
Every single time, I'm black. And the reason they discriminated you was where you were from.
Not because of your skin color.
Yeah, because I'm from here.
Right.
I'm a citizen of here.
Mm-hmm.
What reason do you have to discriminate against me?
Right.
And so my point is, there is no, it's just apples and oranges.
Mm-hmm.
They're both fruit.
Right.
Meaning you are being disrespected or not treated right. Mm-hmm. Also, your civil rights might be violated. Mm-hmm. So like when we do civil rights, the NAACP, it's not a black or white thing.
Right.
It's just the people who think they're being oppressed wanted an organization.
Right.
Because when it first started, there was white and black people who started it. Mm-hmm. What starts to happen is when you keep having the same problems, and it's only black people having the problems, black people still want to join that organization. Right. White people ain't having those problems.
Right. Right.
The only time white people have that problems is when they come to us, usually, they have black kids. Mm-hmm. So because the parent, one of the parents are black. Right. And it may be the white parent that comes to us because they want justice for their black kid. Right. See, they never needed justice for it when they were growing up. Now that they have a black kid.
What would you say to a Caucasian person who, I hear this a lot, they say, well, why are you trying to make us feel guilty? I didn't know no slaves, and you was never a slave. What would you say to someone like that to get them to try to understand? Or why do you think they say that? Is it because they really don't want to try to understand?
They don't need to. Why do they need to understand? It ain't their problem. And the only reason they're talking about it now is because maybe you're friends with them. Or they think they have a good answer. They think they have an answer that you can't answer. But it all stems to who said that you were a slave owner, and who said you was a master, and who said it's your fault?
Right.
Nobody said that.
No one said that.
The case for restorative justice is reconciliation.
Right.
It's biblical.
Right.
There's something called atonement.
Yep.
It's biblical.
It's biblical.
And other religions have that, even though we know all religions actually came from one religion, which is God, and people just perverted it to what they wanted because it fit what they wanted to do or where they lived or what have you. So the point is simply this: if you're about justice in America, which America says they are, if you pay your bills, which America says they do, or want to, the connection between Caucasians now and the Caucasians and the Caucasians then is the same thing they say. What is the reason they say they fight a Confederate flag? What's the reason you've heard?
I got an argument with someone about they said, well, that's my heritage, and
so hold on.
I was like, you're not even. Yeah.
So they're connected to a heritage that they wasn't here.
Right. Right.
So you have a connection to the past when you wasn't here that you honor.
Right.
So my point is, we have a connection to the past of people who owe us money.
Right.
So it's not that person's heritage you're connected to. You're connected to everybody that was born after the point that happened. So that whole is your heritage. So my heritage is all the way back to when my people were back there.
Right.
And what they did, they worked for free.
Right.
And that was against the law. So the law was broken. They're owed that.
Right.
There's nothing else to talk about except who owes it.
Right.
And how much do they owe and what do they owe.
Yep.
And so, no, you don't owe it. Since the people who are dead owe it, you know what happens when, let's say the guy from Walmart. He was a 500, he was worth 30 some billion or $100 billion. When he died, what happened to all that money? Well, if you
it was spread out to his family, right? Yeah.
Why? They didn't do it, he did it.
Right. Good point.
So it passes down. And what do you think happen when they die with that money?
Right. They're gonna keep
it's going to go to their parents.
Right.
And go to their parents. Somebody don't come up and say, well, wait a minute, that's not yours. You weren't even born when he started.
Right.
So that's not yours. What do you got? See, we understand.
That's
They're saying that. They understand. They just don't want it to happen. They don't want black people to have what they're supposed to have.
And that's what I understood now when I used to study or look at Dr. Claude Anderson, I think it was.
Yes.
And when he defined what racism was and how he said
talks about goods and services and labor.
Yeah. And he's talking about how blacks really can't be racist because racism is about power and wealth, and there was never no change or exchange of it back to or towards black people or whatever.
Yes. So when I said white supremacy and white privilege is benign, it's benign meaning we can go back to then or we can start now, either way. When the Constitution and all the time, even during slavery or what have you, well, before officially slavery, if all the congressmen are white, all the judges are white, all the police officers are white, all the landowners are white, all the systems are made by white people, that's because most of the people are those are the people in charge.
Yeah.
So that's white supremacy.
Right.
That's just how it is. That's just how it is. And there's nothing. There's no problem with that.
Right.
Those people, those women, and those kids that were born from them and they were white, they were allowed to have certain things because they were white.
Right.
That's their privilege.
Right.
That's a privilege they have.
Right.
Because when you ask all the black people, they didn't have those privileges.
Right. Right.
Now, what I'm saying is if you have 300 people and 4 people are black, those 300 people are probably going to make everything.
Right.
And they're not being racist, they just have more people.
Right.
That's when it's benign.
Right.
But when those 296 people say, we're going to make some laws so that those 4 people can't have something, now that's racist.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Right.
The problem was when you told us we had to work for free. The problem when you told us we weren't allowed to read and write.
Man, read and write, bro.
The problem when you told us we couldn't marry. The problem when you told us when we could and when we couldn't have kids.
I didn't know it went that far. Jeez.
We're going to tell you if you're allowed to sleep with your husband. We're going to tell you first of all, you can't get married. But first of all, you can't not even know how to have sex with each other. But if the master comes down, you have sex with whoever you want to.
And right in front of him.
And right in front of them. And if you say something, we'll beat you or we'll sell you. Because I don't want no more men here because you're strong.
This is deep.
Well, it's not deep. It's deep. It is exactly what it says in Romans 1? Talks about a reprobate mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's what a reprobate mind does when it has total control and it doesn't adhere to nobody else. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
I'll do whatever I can and have whatever I want. I'd rob, steal, I'd make people work. If I didn't have to pay them, they'd work for free.
Right.
And not because I'm being mean to them. I'm thinking, I'm only worried about me.
Right.
You know. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some people who are just evil and they make that further. Because you did. So that's where, now, individually, that mom and that son and those kids from that white supremacy system, when we're playing together, Johnny, who's black, and Robbie, who's white, and we're playing baseball, or we're racing, and I win, and then Johnny starts crying, and somebody says, "What are you crying from?" And he says, he called me a name, because he knows that if somebody black calls somebody white a name, that's punished.
Right.
He used his white privilege. He weaponized it. So therefore, that white privilege is racism now. The white privilege, there was nothing wrong with it. Me and you race. If you allow me to win and I win, I won. It had nothing to do with color. It had to do with who was faster. But you brought color in it when you decided to be upset that I won.
Right.
And you wanted to have me punished. And the only way I could be punished, because if it had been two white kids, you wouldn't have been punished.
Right.
But if you're black, you
get punished. That's deep.
That's white privilege. It's that simple. It's not about how much money you have and somebody else has. It's not about whether or not you've been wrong and somebody else been wrong. It's what can't you get because of your color and what can you get because of your color.
Right.
That's white privilege. And it doesn't have to be a negative thing until you don't acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it. You're right. Right.
And when you don't acknowledge it, you disrespect everything that's happened to me because of it. And now I'm supposed to have a conversation with you that's on an even keel. I'm supposed to not be upset. I'm supposed to just be okay. And, oh, okay, you're right. You don't have white privilege. The only reason I'm the way I'm in is because I don't do what I'm supposed to do, and I'm just not, I'm lazy, and I'm not this. Like, the country was built off of black slaves. Blacks ain't lazy.
Right.
Blacks didn't make that up.
Right.
Somebody put that on them.
Exactly.
They put that on them after rights start coming about. Things started to change, but they still wanted to keep them out of jobs.
Right.
So they'd use an excuse by one person who might not have done something. The other 50 did, but you say, oh, you can't hurt blacks, they're lazy, so you should hurt whites. No difference than nowadays, you know. I remember back when I was a little kid, and if you talk to your parents or whatever, and you ask them, who used to be on the garbage trucks? It was all black people.
Wow.
Because it's a dirty job.
Right.
Why do you not see blacks on the back of the garbage trucks now? Because it's a good job, because the mills are gone.
Wow.
See, when the mills was up, the white folks was in the mill making big money.
Yeah.
Who wants to dump garbage?
Right.
Until the mill's gone. And you need to find benefits. You need to work for the city, because the city always going to need their trash dumped. Move the blacks off. That's a white job. There's benefits, complete benefits. You can raise the pay now.
That's deep.
No, what is that system? The way you know who system is who are the people that's making it.
Right.
Because if all of a sudden, every time, if you were not a Christian, and every time you thought there was rules that was against your religion or things you did because you was a Christian, and you looked at everybody who was in control of making all the rules, and none of them was Christians,
right,
and say they were Muslims, you would say that was Muslim supremacy.
Right.
If somebody white goes to Nigeria, and they see that they don't have as much as Nigerians have, they might say, man, this is a Nigerian, black supremacy. They won't allow me to do something. Well, yeah, that's because it's all blacks. They don't have certain things for whites. They don't sell suntan lotion.
Right.
But that's racist. Okay, that's not racist because they're against you. It's because they didn't need it.
Right.
Well, yeah, but now I need it. I'm here, and they said I can be a Nigerian.
You're right.
So what Nigerians should say is, okay, we'll find a way to get either manufacture or have suntan lotion shipped.
Right.
If they refuse to do it, they're being racist. Now, that's just a whole example.
Now, when I made a statement back, when I grew up, we had to stand up, say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. We had to learn how to recite the preamble.
Yes.
And we talk about how the Constitution is our foundation of things. Is it fair for me to say all of that had nothing to do with for black people? None of that was for us.
You mean as far as standing for the flag?
Yeah.
Let me say this.
Because that was a big argument about the Kaepernick, but he was doing it to bring attention to things happening with cops treating us. But even just a representation of standing for the flag and what it stands for and what it represents. If we go back to the foundation of when they wrote the Constitution, what it stood for, wouldn't that seem like it excluded blacks? And why should they feel wrong if they don't want to stand for it? Or can you talk about that, or where are you staying on that?
Ultimately, first of all, if you do it, it depends on who the people are.
I didn't even know there was comments on it.
Racism is the biggest trap by the system to divide and make us, the people, separated, hating one another, making us weak and divided. All creeds together as one is powerful and dangerous. The system is, yeah. But the thing is the system isn't arbitrary.
Okay.
Meaning, people control the system.
Right.
So it's not the system that's wrong, it's the people who are controlling the system. Give them a name.
Right.
When you give them a name, then you can ask that person, and what's their reason for doing it?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, somebody's reason isn't to be racist themselves. It's to perpetuate the system that's going because it's good for them.
Right.
But if you know that the system is only good for you and not good for black people, and you know
you're
that,
part of it.
Then because you're actively participating.
That's
now.
biblical too.
Yeah, you're actively participating in this. You know it now.
Yeah.
What does it say in the Bible when it talks about if there was no sin, you would not know you were regressing. I mean, you would be a transgressor of the law. If there was no law, rather, you would not know you're sinning.
Exactly.
So if you don't know that the system is set up to be against black people or not for black people, you don't know that you're being a racist.
Right.
But when you find out that if you continue to do it this way, black people will continue to be condemned. Now you know you're an active participant in white supremacy. Now that makes you a racist.
Yep.
Now if you decide to stand up,